In 1951, a Turkish army captain named İlhan Durupınar was on a NATO mapping mission over eastern Anatolia. Below him, near the Iranian border, the aerial camera captured something unexpected. Not a glacier, not a shadow, a shape. A massive, symmetrical, boat-like ridge pressed into the earth like a fossil, stretching the length of nearly 2 American football fields. He reported it. Scientists came. They dug. They found rocks and soil. And they walked away, officially declaring it a freak of nature. That was 1960. 75 years later, the same site has been scanned with military-grade radar, and what's underneath has reopened one of history's most contested debates. Before we get to the radar, let's understand why this site matters at all. For thousands of years, 3 of the world's major religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, have shared a flood story. A man named Noah. A massive wooden vessel. A catastrophic deluge. A mountain where the ark finally rested. The Bible calls it the Mountains of Ararat. Ancient Babylonian records describe the same event. Even the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest written stories on Earth, predating the book of Genesis by over 1,000 years, tells of a great flood, a wooden boat, and a mountaintop landing. That level of independent agreement across cultures isn't coincidence. Something happened in the ancient Near East that left a deep scar in human memory, deep enough to be passed down across every civilization in the region. The physical question, did a vessel actually exist, and if so, where is it, has driven explorers, archaeologists, and believers to the mountains of eastern Turkey for centuries. Most returned empty-handed. But in 1951, that search got a new focal point. When Captain Durupınar's photographs were analyzed at Ohio State University's Geodetic Institute in 1959, the measurements stopped researchers cold. The formation was 164 meters long, approximately 538 feet. The book of Genesis describes Noah's Ark as 300 cubits long, using the most widely accepted ancient cubit conversion that comes to roughly 437 to 515 feet. Close enough that scientists couldn't simply ignore it. Close enough that, more than 7 decades later, people are still digging. The site is called the Durupınar Formation. It sits on the slopes of Mount Tendürek, about 18 miles south of Mount Ararat, Turkey's towering 16,800-foot dormant volcano, near the small town of Doğu Beyazıt, less than 2 miles from the Iranian border. Up close, the formation is striking. The ground rises in a long oval mound with defined edges and what appear to be ridges along the sides, like the outline of a hull pressed flat under centuries of earth. It's composed primarily of limonite, a common iron-bearing mineral, embedded in what geologists describe as a doubly plunging syncline, a natural fold in sedimentary rock layers. That last phrase matters. We'll come back to it. In 1977, amateur explorer Ron Wyatt arrived at the site and began promoting it as Noah's Ark. He described rib timbers, iron fittings, and petrified wood. His claims attracted worldwide attention and immediate pushback from the scientific community. In 1985, Dr. John Baumgartner, a geophysicist from Los Alamos National Laboratory, who believed the site deserved serious investigation, helped conduct ground-penetrating radar surveys. The team reported patterns beneath the surface that they believed were consistent with an internal structure. But in 1996, geologist Lawrence Collins, co-authoring with David Fasold, who had originally supported the arc theory before changing his mind, published a detailed analysis concluding that the formation was entirely natural. The features Wyatt had called iron brackets were identified as natural concentrations of magnetite. The supposed petrified wood was identified as crinkled metamorphic rock. The rib structures were consistent with the folded sedimentary layers of a syncline. The official scientific position, natural geological formation, no man-made structure present. That conclusion stood largely unchallenged for nearly 2 decades. But then something happened that no one predicted. In 2019, an independent researcher named Andrew Jones, working with a team called Noah's Ark Scans, arrived at the Durupınar site with technology that didn't exist in 1985. And the data he collected was different enough that even cautious scientists began paying attention again. Before we get to what Jones found, we need to understand the long, messy history of claimed discoveries at this site and on Mount Ararat itself, because that history explains why the scientific community approaches new claims with extreme caution. Over the decades, multiple explorers have claimed to find ancient wood in the mountains of eastern Turkey. Some of it was carbon-dated. The results were all over the place. Some samples came back dated to around 700 BCE, far too recent for any proposed timeline of Noah. Others returned dates suggesting an age of 3,000 to 5,000 years. The most dramatic claim came in 2010, when a group called Noah's Ark Ministries International announced they had found a wooden structure inside a cave on Mount Ararat itself, at 13,000 feet elevation, with multiple compartments, wooden beams, and ceramic fragments. Their carbon dating suggested the wood was around 4,800 years old. The story went worldwide overnight. Then the questions started coming. The wood samples had not been independently verified. The location was never disclosed with enough precision for other researchers to check. Turkish archaeologist Oktay Belli of Istanbul University called the find not credible and suggested the wood had been placed there deliberately. The claim quietly collapsed. It wasn't the first time, and it won't be the last. Here's the uncomfortable truth about Noah's Ark research. It sits at the intersection of faith, archaeology, and public attention, a combination that has historically produced far more dramatic announcements than confirmed discoveries. Every few years, a headline promises the Ark has been found, and every few years, independent scrutiny dismantles the claim, which is exactly why what Jones and his team found at Durupınar between 2019 and 2026 is being treated differently. Not because they've claimed to have found the Ark, but because they've refused to. Andrew Jones is not a religious crusader with a camera. He's an independent researcher who describes his approach as scientific rather than devotional, though he openly acknowledges the site's religious significance. Starting in 2019 and continuing through multiple field seasons, his team applied ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity tomography, LiDAR scanning, and detailed soil chemistry analysis to the Durupınar Formation. They were working alongside researchers affiliated with Istanbul Technical University, Arda İbrahim Çeçen University in Turkey, and Andrews University in Michigan. The results, released incrementally through 2025 and into 2026, contained several findings that the team, and a growing number of outside observers, found difficult to explain away as simple geology. First, the soil chemistry. A comprehensive soil study completed in 2026 and overseen by Australian soil scientist Bill Crabtree and Turkish geologist Dr. Mehmet Salih Bayraktutan revealed a striking pattern. The soil inside the formation contained nearly 3 times the organic matter of the soil immediately surrounding it. The chemical composition inside was consistently different from the rocky hillside just meters away. Jones described it simply. We have 3 times more organic matter found inside versus right outside. So it's a distinct object and not just part of the mountainside. 3 times the organic matter, in a mound of rock and clay on a barren hillside. Then came the radar. The GPR and ERT scans revealed angular structures as deep as 6 meters below the surface, patterns that researchers say are inconsistent with the random, curved layers typical of a natural syncline. More specifically, the scans showed what Jones described as a central corridor running lengthwise through the formation, with lateral passages branching off it. In April 2026, Jones stated, "Our new research has shown that there are tunnels about 4 meters down and about 2 meters high, going down the center of the boat and on the inside edge of the hull shape." Tunnels, running through the center of the formation. Now, and this is critical, these findings have not yet been published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. They have not been independently replicated by a neutral research institution. The mainstream geological consensus remains that the formation is a natural syncline, and many geologists argue that GPR anomalies can be caused by natural fractures, water movement, and mineral deposits rather than any man-made structure. That scientific skepticism is valid, and it matters. But it also means the question is now genuinely open in a way it hasn't been before. Because if the organic matter differential and the angular tunnel structures can be explained naturally, nobody has yet produced that explanation. And the team's next step, sending a robot camera into the detected tunnels to film and sample the interior, could produce evidence that settles the debate in either direction. So, let's do something that rarely happens in popular coverage of this story. Let's be honest about what the evidence actually shows, all of it, including what it doesn't show. What is established fact? The Durupınar Formation is a real geological feature, 538 feet long, shaped like a vessel from above, located 18 miles from Mount Ararat, in a region that multiple ancient civilizations independently associated with a catastrophic flood event. The mainstream geological consensus, based on decades of analysis, is that it is a natural rock fold, a syncline, shaped by erosion and tectonic activity over millennia. The features previously claimed as man-made artifacts, like iron brackets and petrified wood, have been identified by geologists as natural mineral concentrations and metamorphic rock. The first excavation in 1960, conducted by a legitimate academic team, found no archaeological remains. Those are the facts that cut against the ARC hypothesis. And here is what the newer data raises, without resolving. The soil inside the formation is chemically distinct from its surroundings in a way that hasn't been fully explained. The GPR scans show angular, symmetrical interior structures that researchers say don't match the expected profile of a natural syncline. And the formation sits in a region where Chalcolithic-era human activity, roughly 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, has been confirmed in the surrounding area by the multinational research team working the site since 2021. Professor Faruk Kaya, Vice Rector of Arda Ibrahim Chechen University, summarized their position carefully. According to the initial results, it's believed there were human activities in this region since the Chalcolithic period. He stressed that more research is needed before any definitive conclusions about the formation itself can be drawn. Human activity in the region, not a confirmed vessel, but human activity, in the right place, at the right time. Here is the honest summary of where science stands in 2026. There is no confirmed physical evidence that Noah's Ark exists at the Durupınar Formation or anywhere else. What exists is an unusual geological feature with anomalous chemical and subsurface signatures that the current research team believes deserve a full excavation, and that mainstream geologists believe can be explained without invoking a man-made structure. Both of those positions are held by people looking at the same data, which means the next phase of investigation, the robot camera, the excavation proposal now being developed with Turkish authorities, isn't just another headline. It's a scientific test with a real answer waiting at the end of it. And that answer, whatever it turns out to be, will matter. Because the Epic of Gilgamesh is real. The Book of Genesis is real. The Sumerian flood tablets are real. The question of whether something catastrophic happened in these mountains, and whether anyone actually survived it on a boat, isn't a theological question alone. It's a historical one. And history, unlike faith, requires evidence. But here's the question that lingers, the one that neither the skeptics nor the believers have fully answered. If the Durupınar Formation is entirely natural, why is the soil chemistry inside it so different from the soil immediately surrounding it? Natural synclines don't typically generate 3 times higher organic matter concentrations compared to adjacent terrain. What biological or chemical process explains that difference? On a barren, rocky hillside, with no obvious source? No geologist has yet published a peer-reviewed explanation. And if the angular structures detected by the radar are simply natural fractures and mineral deposits, as geologists argue, then why do they appear organized in patterns consistent with a corridor and lateral chambers, rather than the irregular geometry typical of tectonic folding? These questions don't prove the Ark is there. But they are exactly the right kind of questions, the kind that demand investigation rather than assumption in either direction. The robot camera is coming. The excavation proposal is on the table. Turkish authorities have been supportive of continued research at the site. Within the next few years, we will have higher resolution data from inside that formation than anyone has ever collected. And there are only 2 possible outcomes. Either the interior reveals nothing but rock and mineral, confirming what geologists have argued for decades, and finally closing the book on one of history's most persistent mysteries. Or it reveals something that can't be explained by any geological process we know. Something organic, something structured, something ancient. And if that happens, if there is wood or organized material, or anything that cannot be a syncline, then we will be forced to ask a question that changes everything we thought we understood about the ancient world. Not just, was it real? But, what else did we get wrong? The Durupınar Formation remains classified as a natural geological feature by mainstream science. Active research by the Noah's Ark Scans team and Turkish university partners is ongoing as of 2026. No peer-reviewed excavation results have been published. We're going to keep watching this, because in the next few years, either this story ends or it gets a lot bigger. Subscribe so you're here when it does.